Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much you fix, strive, pretend, or succeed, the ache does not go away? Why the nights remain restless even after the boxes are all checked, the goals achieved, the masks polished to perfection? Maybe you have told to yourself, "What is wrong with me?" in the quiet moments, those tense silences when there is nothing left to distract you from that pressure in your chest, that quiet ache, that hidden discontent. Well, here is a truth that no one has had the courage to tell you until now. Most of your suffering is self-inflicted, not because you are weak, not because you are broken, but because somewhere along the way, you made a decision, a quiet, subtle, almost invisible decision to abandon yourself. It did not happen all at once. No, this betrayal was gradual. You began silencing your anger because it made you seem unlikable. You swallowed your sadness because it made others uncomfortable. You dimmed your joy because it made people jealous. You turned yourself into a product, a performance, something easier for others to accept. And you told yourself it was maturity. You called it adaptation. You labeled it growth. But what it truly was separation, the quiet killing of the parts of you that could not survive in a world that only wants your smile. And now, here you are, years later, wondering why it still hurts, why anxiety follows you like a shadow, why your relationships feel hollow, why even in love you feel completely alone. You are suffering not because life is cruel. You are suffering because you have disconnected from who you really are. And when you are disconnected from your true self, life becomes unbearable. Even when everything appears to be fine, this disconnection causes a deep psychological wound. It does not bleed, but it festers. Emotional pain is not a distraction. It is your soul's warning signal. It is not random. It is a message shouting, "You are betraying yourself." Every time you say yes when your instincts say no. Every time you smile when you want to cry. Every time you twist yourself into a version that pleases others but punishes you. And you have become very good at punishing yourself, have you not? You have built entire identities based on who you think you should be, while quietly resenting who you truly are. But your unconscious mind never forgets. It keeps track, and when the lie goes on too long, your body begins to fight back. Insomnia, fatigue, irritability, emotional numbness. These are not glitches. They are warnings. Your nervous system is not broken. It is reacting to the pressure of living behind a mask, to the exhaustion of pretending to be someone you are not. Carl Jung called it the greatest tragedy, to live a life that is not your own. And most people are doing exactly that. They mistake survival for living. They mistake applause for love. They mistake productivity for purpose. You do not suffer because you feel too much. You suffer because you have learned to suppress what you feel. You do not suffer because life is unfair. You suffer because you have accepted the belief that your truth does not deserve to be heard. You have mistaken adaptation for authenticity. And now, your soul is starving. The root of suffering is not only trauma, it is the abandonment of yourself that follows. It is the betrayal of your inner voice in exchange for external approval. We all think healing is about chasing light. But healing is not only about light. Healing is about reclaiming what you were forced to bury. Your rage, your grief, your need to be seen. That is where the pain lives and where your freedom begins. There is a part of you that you do not talk about. You might not even know it exists, but it is there. It shows up in your worst moments, when you lash out and regret it, when you sabotage the very thing you said you wanted, when you are overwhelmed with shame and have no idea why. That is not randomness. That is not just who you are. That is your shadow. And it is not a poetic idea. It is real. It is tangible. And if you do not face it, it will control your life from behind the curtain, pulling your strings like a silent puppeteer. The shadow is everything you were taught to reject. Every impulse you were told was shameful. Every desire that got you punished. Every emotion that made you seem like too much. You did not remove them. You buried them. You covered them with politeness, ambition, perfectionism, and control. But they did not die. They grew sharper in the dark. We all wear masks. Polished, controlled, kind. But behind those masks is a part of us we are afraid to meet. The side that is jealous, resentful, lustful, manipulative. The side that wants power. But that creature is not evil. It is wounded, and until you learn to hear it, really hear it without judgment or panic, it will continue to sabotage you in silence. Think about all the times you said, "I do not know what came over me." You do know. You just have not looked closely enough. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Most people move through life believing they are victims of circumstance. They do not realize they are trapped by the parts of themselves they have disowned, the partner they keep attracting, the self-doubt they cannot escape, the cycle of emotional outbursts followed by shame. This is not fate. It is your shadow doing what it must to get your attention. And here is the hard truth. Facing the shadow demands a level of honesty most people are unwilling to practice. It means admitting you are not always the good one. Sometimes you want destruction. You're capable of manipulation, capable of cruelty, capable of deceit. And these parts of you are not mistakes. They are human, and they belong to you. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. This is the point where most people stop. They play with self-awareness, but when the reflection gets ugly, they flinch. They go back to blaming others. They return to the persona. If you are still here, you have already shown that you are not most people. You have proven that you have the strength to face the truth. Even when it hurts, the shadow is not here to destroy your life. It is here to save it, but only if you stop treating it like an enemy and start seeing it for what it is, a part of your soul that has been begging to return. This is not about loving darkness. It is about reclaiming your energy, your power, your wholeness. Because when you exile your rage, you lose your boundaries. When you exile your desire, you lose your passion. When you exile your fear, you lose your intuition. You're not here to become perfect. You're here to become whole. That means taking back every broken piece you once disowned. Because what you hide will haunt you, but what you face will set you free. Let's not romanticize this. Confronting yourself is not a gentle ritual under moonlight. It is a brutal war in the mirror. It is not a 5-step checklist. It is peeling away the skin of every lie you have told yourself in order to survive. And yes, you had your reasons. You were trying to protect yourself, but what once kept you safe is now keeping you stuck. You want healing? Then you must understand something important. Real healing does not coddle. It confronts. It breaks you open and shows you everything you promised yourself you would never admit. You do not want to feel your shame, so you hide behind productivity. You do not want to feel your grief, so you protect yourself with sarcasm. You do not want to feel your rage, so you convince yourself you're just tired. But your body remembers. The clenched jaw, the heaviness in your gut, the numbness that spreads after another day of fake smiles and buried truth. That is not just exhaustion, that is suppression. And your body will keep sounding the alarm louder and louder until you finally stop ignoring the fire underneath the surface. The unconscious does not speak in polite words. It speaks in dreams, in triggers, in emotional explosions you cannot explain. It shows up in your relationships, in the person who provokes you every time, in the patterns that never die, no matter how many boundaries you try to set. And your job is not to medicate them away, it is to interpret them. This is where the real work begins. Not in books, not in spiritual phrases about high vibration, but in honest, raw confrontation. You sit down with a pen and paper, not to write affirmations, but to pour out your truth, to admit what no one else has heard, because even you have barely dared to face it. Write down the things you believe make you unlovable. That is where the treasure is hidden. Once you bring something into the light, it begins to lose its power over you in the dark. And do not be naive. You cannot always do this alone. Sometimes you need a mirror that does not distort your reflection. That is the purpose of deep, psychologically grounded therapy. Not to fix you, but to help you recognize what you were trained to overlook. You need someone to hold the flashlight while you walk through the darkness of your own mind. You need someone who will not flinch when you finally speak out loud the poison you have carried in silence for years. And no, this is not about staying in pain forever. It is about stepping fully into it so you can finally step out of it. Most people never heal because they refuse to feel. They avoid. They explain it away. They say, "This is just who I am." But the truth is, they are afraid. Afraid of what they will see when the mask falls. Afraid of what awareness demands. Because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. You cannot keep blaming your ex, your childhood, or your circumstances. You will have to take ownership. Ownership of your choices, your avoidance, your role in your own suffering. But if you are willing to face yourself without filters, without excuses, and without an escape route, something changes. You stop feeling like a victim of life. You begin becoming a creator of it. Not because it becomes easier, but because you are no longer lying to yourself. And there is something unshakable about a person who knows their own depths and still chooses to face them rather than run. So do not come here looking for comfort. Come here looking for truth. And if you can still handle that, we will go even deeper. Pain is not your enemy, but you have been trained to treat it like a virus, to suppress it, to avoid it with noise, substances, work, sex, spiritual bypassing, with anything you can grab in the moment to escape the rawness of being alive. You are taught that feeling bad means something is wrong, that suffering is a problem to fix. But what if pain is not a mistake? What if pain is the most honest part of you that remains? The truth is this. Pain does not arrive to ruin your life. It arrives to expose the parts of you that have gone quiet. It is your soul's emergency broadcast. It is the signal that says you have wandered too far from yourself, and the longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes. That depression, it is not simply a disease. It is your psyche shutting off the lights on a life that no longer fits. That anxiety, it is not just a chemical imbalance. It is your system reacting to the cage you have built and convinced yourself is home. Pain is not the enemy. Denial is. You want to evolve without discomfort. You want transformation without falling apart. You want growth without losing anything. But that is not how the psyche works. Carl Jung said suffering must be fully experienced before it can be overcome. But you keep trying to go around the fire. You keep jumping from one quick fix to another. Meditation, cold plunges, vision board. All of them become distractions when they are not rooted in real inner work. You want to transcend, but you have not even allowed yourself to descend. Pain is the descent, and yet it will break you open. It will destroy your illusions. It will tear through your false stories. It will wipe the smile off your "I am fine" mask. But that is not cruelty. That is grace wearing the face of destruction. So ask yourself this: when has anything truly changed in your life because you were comfortable? When did you grow the most? Not when life was smooth, but when it was crumbling, when you were left, fired, betrayed, split open. That is when the masks dropped. That is when the real questions started to rise. Who am I without this? What have I been running from? Why do I keep abandoning myself? Pain is not punishment. It is the portal. And yet you are still trying to shut it out. You blame bad luck. You blame someone else. Because if pain is here to teach, that makes you the student. And that means you are responsible. Not for what happened to you, but for what you choose to do with it now. Let me make this clear. Feeling pain does not mean you are failing. It means you are finally alive. We live in a world that treats aliveness like illness. If you're sad, you must be broken. If you are grieving, you must be weak. If you are angry, you must be toxic. But maybe the real poison is a culture addicted to comfort and terrified of truth. Because the truth hurts. But if you let it, it also rebuilds. If you stop running, if you sit with the heat long enough to hear what it is trying to tell you. Pain does not want to stay, it wants to be heard, and once it is heard, it begins to move, to change, to integrate, but only if you listen, not as a victim, not as a thinker, but as a warrior. A warrior standing bare in front of the mirror saying, I am ready to hear what I have been trying not to feel. Most people will not do this. Most will keep chasing distractions until their body collapses or until their soul disappears behind a smile. But you're still here, you're still listening. So ask yourself, are you finally ready to stop fighting pain and start learning from it? There comes a moment in the aftermath of devastation when something strange begins to happen. Like a change in the wind, the way silence feels different after a storm. It is the moment when you stop fighting yourself, when you stop seeing your flaws as enemies and begin recognizing them as forgotten children. This is not about triumph. It is about reunion, the beginning of becoming whole. And no, it does not feel like bliss. It feels like standing barefoot on broken glass, realizing that every shard was once a part of you. You have spent years cutting pieces out, your rage, your desire, your fear, your grief. You did it just to be accepted. You wore masks until they hardened. You called it growth, but it was fragmentation. You were never lost. You were scattered. Individuation, as Jung called it, is not about becoming better. It is about becoming real. Not a perfected self, but a whole self. That includes everything, the sacred and the messy, the holy and the hungry, the angel and the animal. You want peace? Then you must welcome contradiction, because healing does not make you pure. It makes you honest. You will have to learn how to love the parts of yourself that make you cringe, the parts that feel weak, the parts you want to bury, because the shame you have been running from, that is the gatekeeper to your freedom. Till you can look at the part of yourself you most dislike and say, even you belong here, you will remain divided. And a divided self can never rest. This is not about forgiveness. This is reclamation. This is the moment when you stop asking others to tell you who you are and start listening to the parts of yourself that have waited in silence for years. The desire you buried to appear good, the ambition you strangled to stay small, the anger you silenced to keep from scaring anyone. Those parts still remember you, and they are not here to ruin your life. They are here to complete it. And when that integration begins, something remarkable happens. Suffering no longer defines you. You can feel sadness without drowning in it. You can feel fear without surrendering to it. You stop living inside the wound. You begin holding the wound. And in that space, you find something more lasting than relief. You find clarity, not the clarity of thought, the clarity of embodiment. And people will feel it. Some will be drawn to you, others will fear you, because authenticity is magnetic and terrifying. You are no longer performing. You are no longer easy to control. You have met your own darkness, and that makes you unshakable. There is no end point, no final version of who you are. The path of becoming whole is a lifelong walk. When you are awake, you cannot betray yourself without consequences. Your body will resist. Your soul will push back. You will know deeply when something pulls you out of alignment, and you will choose differently. Because once you have tasted wholeness, nothing else is enough. You no longer settle for scraps when you have remembered your own table. You no longer beg to be seen when you have learned how to see yourself. You're not a work in progress. You're a masterpiece in repair. So now what? Now that the mask has cracked, now that the lie has dissolved, now that you have stood face to face with the exiled parts of yourself, what happens next? You feel more like yourself than you ever have before, and the temptation to relax is strong. But individuation is not the end, it is the beginning. Awareness is not a destination, it is a call to action. The question becomes, what will you do with everything you have reclaimed? Healing is not a private privilege, it is a responsibility. When you come back from the depths with new eyes, the world no longer looks neutral. You hear the lies people tell themselves just to survive the day. You recognize the pain behind their defenses, the loneliness behind their perfection, and then it hits you. You cannot unsee this. To carry that awareness and do nothing with it, that is a new kind of betrayal. Carl Jung made it clear. Individual transformation must become a collective contribution, not through preaching, but through living, fully, with courage, as someone who has faced themselves and chosen to walk a new path. And this is the part that brings a different kind of pain, because now that you know what self-abandonment feels like, you cannot keep doing it, not even in small, polite ways. You cannot say yes when you mean no and pretend it does not hurt. You cannot stay silent when your soul is screaming. You become allergic to your own past behaviors, and not everyone will celebrate the sound of your voice, especially the people who were comforted by your silence. But that is the point. You were never meant to fit inside a system that feeds on disconnection. You were meant to challenge it, not with noise, but with integrity. That means choosing relationships that nourish instead of numb, work that aligns instead of performs, boundaries that are built from clarity, not resentment. Every choice becomes a ripple, and the more honest those choices are, the more others will feel it, even if they do not fully understand. Some will dislike you for it. Some will thank you. Most will say nothing, but something will move inside them. A sleeping voice, a buried truth. You simply lived, and that was what moved them. You need to stop participating in your own distortion. Stop exchanging authenticity for approval. Every moment you choose truth instead of comfort, presence instead of performance, depth instead of display. You help heal the collective wound, because the real gift of individuation is not that you feel better. It is that you become better for the world around you. You walk through the fire of inherited pain, and you walk out carrying water. You break the cycle. You become the pivot point of change, not because you are perfect, but because you stopped pretending. You did not come here to be safe. You came here to remember who you are and become fully yourself. And if this video touched you, confronted you, awakened you, don't stop here. The next video is just as important as this one. It continues what we started here. I'll see you there.